I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Two new witnesses taking the stand on day 16 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking and racketeering trial. This morning, a forensic video expert testified about that 2016 hotel surveillance footage showing Combs attacking Cassie Ventura. The defense raised questions about whether the footage was manipulated, but the experts saying there are no anomalies going on in the file to indicate it had been manually altered. Piazza's testimony, that expert, was followed by Cassie Ventura's friend, Brianna Bongolan, known as Bonna. She told the jury that in 2016, Combs dangled her over a 17th floor balcony, the claim Combs denies. Bongolan also testified about a time she said she was asleep in Ventura's apartment and was woken up by Combs banging at the door. She described Combs being upset, saying, "I just remember seeing a knife get thrown in her direction," referring to Ventura. The prosecutor asked, how did Cassie react when the knife was thrown in her direction? Bongolan responded, she threw it back, adding that it didn't hit Combs. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. If convicted, he faces the possibility of life in prison. Later in the show, the frenzy around this trial. We have a YouTube star, Tisa Tells, joining us live. She goes to court every day, live streaming her real-time commentary for her more than 500,000 followers. She'll help us set the scene about what's happening around this high-profile criminal trial. But we begin with ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky live outside the federal courthouse here in Manhattan. Aaron, the day started with that forensic video analyst talking about the hotel video. What did he say?
It wasn't so much what he said, Eva. It's more what his testimony allowed federal prosecutors to do, and that's play what may be some of the most visceral evidence for the jury over and over. The defense kind of opened the door to this, and the judge told them as much outside the presence of the jury by suggesting that the video had been manipulated or sped up or somehow altered. The judge told the defense, you know, you're having prosecutors dispel that by having them play the video, which is not something the defense really wanted. And yet there was Frank Piazza, this forensic video analyst, walking through frame by frame, and the jury again getting to see Sean Combs throwing Cassie Ventura to the floor, kicking her, stomping her, dragging her, throwing a vase of flowers at her. And on cross-examination, the defense took pains to show how the time codes didn't match or the cameras didn't appear to be in sync, but there was no evidence that any of this footage had been altered. And Eva, remember, when it first appeared on television, Sean Combs issued an apology, not denying any of the conduct. He said what's depicted on the video, his behavior, was inexcusable.
Today's big witness, Aaron, was a friend of Cassie Ventura at the time. How did she come to be a part of Combs and Ventura's circle?
Brianna Bongolan met Cassie Ventura while working for a design studio. They were trying to start a line of T-shirts, and Cassie was sort of the name brought in, the talent, and Bongolan was the one to extract the ideas and come up with the clothing line. And they eventually did, although Beyonce and Rihanna also had lines of T-shirts at the same time, so they were never really successful, she said. But eventually they became friends, and really they became drug partners, as she testified. Both she and Cassie Ventura developed a drug partnership where Bongolan would buy the drugs, sell them to Cassie, so much so that she became reliant as part of her income on Cassie buying drugs from her. And they did everything: ecstasy, Molly, cocaine, marijuana, ketamine, Cocoa Puffs, which the jury learned what that was, a mix of marijuana and cocaine. And the defense tried to seize on that to color her testimony.
She also told the story about Diddy dangling her over a balcony. What happened?
Yeah, a real harrowing account of fear and danger. It was 2016. She said she was asleep in Cassie Ventura's apartment when she woke to Sean Combs yelling and banging on the door. And then she remembers running out onto the balcony, trying to make it seem like she was acting casual. Sean Combs comes and lifts her up, telling her, "You know what the F you did," and lifts her onto the railing. She said her feet were dangling over. Sean Combs then lifted her off the railing, threw her onto some furniture. The jury saw pictures of the bruise on her leg and the bandages on her back.
As she's telling the story, I'm curious, what was the reaction from the jurors, from Combs?
Yeah, Sean Combs was shaking his head when she first talked about some of these things. She said that Sean Combs threw a knife at Cassie. She said that once Sean Combs threatened her, that you know I'm the devil and I could kill you. And Sean Combs kind of shook his head a little bit as if to say he didn't quite remember that. And on cross-examination, the defense hammered home what they said were inconsistencies in the way that she's gone over these accounts with prosecutors before trial, the way she testified to them today, and the way she wrote about them in a civil lawsuit that sought $10 million from Sean Combs.
Bongolin's going to take the stand again tomorrow. What can we expect from her tomorrow?
There'll be more of the same relentless cross-examination. Defense attorney Nicole Westmoreland is asking her, you said this to prosecutors, you testified this way. What's up with that? I don't remember. Over and over and over. But Eva, I'm curious as to whether it even matters, because the only thing I can figure is that her story about the balcony and the knife throwing, it all kind of goes to the racketeering point that maybe this is why Cassie Ventura, as prosecutors allege, felt coerced into sexual acts, because she witnessed some of the violence that Bongolin described. On the other hand, her testimony may not have been important at all for that reason, but because she did testify that Sean Combs sold her drugs, another component of racketeering, and that may be what prosecutors hope to gain from her testimony.
Aaron Katersky there at the courthouse, and we should note that Combs denies all of the charges, including those claims that he was dangling her over the balcony there. We have now with us ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer joining me. You got your sleeves rolled up. We got a lot to talk about today. So what stood out to you most?
All right, so of course we had the two witnesses, Frank Piazza and Brianna Bongolin, who testified. Frank Piazza, again, with the video surveillance, saying that the defense basically made the argument that the time codes didn't match up from the different angles, but also one of the angles, that being the lobby, you saw these kind of 10 and 20 and sometimes 30-second skips, but nonetheless, the video spoke for itself. And Brianna testifying about, again, as Aaron Katersky pointed out, those harrowing moments of the knife being thrown allegedly at Sean Combs and then actually thrown back at him and then picking her up by the armpits and then dangling her over the balcony. I still have a big question mark as to whether or not it's true. We'll talk about that in a moment, though.
Okay, this video expert that we heard from today, he confirmed that the video was not altered, that it had been unaltered. Was that even a question?
It was a question. It was a big question that the defense had brought up before the trial had begun, during the trial. And I'm not sure if, for lack of a term, the juice was worth the squeeze, because they're combating this argument. They're trying to make it seem like it's being skipped over, it's sped up to make it look more menacing. But it gave the government the opportunity to play it over and over and over again. And that's not something you want the jury to see of your client. Some of the most violent and dangerous testimony and video they're going to see in this case.
We also heard from Cassie Ventura's friend at the time, Brianna Bongolin. The story that she told, Aaron was just talking about that, her dangling over the balcony, that's a pretty crazy story. The jurors got to see the pictures of the balcony there.
Yeah, so she's testifying on the stand that for a split second she was thinking she was going to fall, but for the most part he was just yelling over and over again for about 15 seconds. But I'm the son of a general contractor, and I thought that this story didn't make sense because most balconies, if you know, I mean, we have young children, we see balconies all the time, and like, that's too low, too high. Balconies in California and New York have to be 42 inches high. She's 5'1", if you believe Sean Combs' social media and posts. He's 5'10". To pick up someone by the armpits and lift them 42 inches high to that point, that didn't make sense to me. And the allegations that she's using drugs and that she couldn't understand or remember a lot of these incidences, I think that's what the defense is going to really hone in on and be like, this story is not plausible. It must not be true.
Yeah, we heard Aaron talk a lot about all the list of drugs that she said she had been using. And that at some point, both her and Cassie Ventura tried to stop using the drugs, but they couldn't. Why was that?
Drug use is difficult, especially when you're talking about the various cocktails. I mean, I've practiced defense here in New York for over a decade, and I was learning about some of the drugs that they were using, the Cocoa Puffs that Aaron brought up. But they did say they were close friends trying to kick the habit, that they had tried cooking as a way of trying to pull apart from the drug use. But it was so much, even to the point that Brianna, when she reached out, when Cassie had filed a lawsuit about this very incident about the balcony, she said, some of those facts are incorrect. It wasn't at a hotel. This person wasn't there. This didn't happen. And her response was very interesting as to Cassie kind of just almost shrugging it off and her giving an excuse of, we used a lot of drugs at the time, so maybe the story might have been off. Another thing I think the defense is going to hone in on, and I'm not quite sure if this was the best witness to put on at the end of the day. I don't think it really helped the government, but it definitely gave the defense someone to kind of point out and say, this is false. And they might be able to sprinkle that throughout the rest of the trial and say, maybe other things are false too.
Brian Buckmeyer, always so good to have you. Still ahead, allegations of abuse and violence, admissions of heavy drug use. Which side did the best in presenting their case today? Our legal minds, Brian and Bernardo, break it all down for us when we come back. Welcome back to ABC News Live. Time now to examine the key legal strategies we saw playing out in court today at the Sean Diddy Combs trial. We have Brian Buckmeyer breaking down the defense, Bernardo Villalona analyzing the prosecution. Bernardo, we're going to start with you. That video, we got to see it again. I mean, how many times has the jury seen it at this point? Did they really need an expert witness to testify about that video?
The prosecution had to call an expert witness to testify about the video because there were allegations by the defense that the video was altered. So in order to prove its validity, its authentication, the prosecutor had to call an expert and testify that, look, this has not been altered. This is the video. So what you see in that video is exactly what transpired. Because now you take that question off the table from the jury. They don't have to figure out, wait, is the video altered? Did they mess it up? Did somebody insert some things in it? Now you take it away from them because you have an expert that testified that that did not happen. So yes, unfortunately, the jury did have to see it at least 50 times today, doing a direct examination, doing cross-examination.
You were saying, like, it's not a good idea to play this not flattering video of your client. How do you think they've handled this?
I don't think it's a great idea, but if you're going to do it, then do it. And I think the positive that does come from it is when you watch a video as harrowing as this, the first time you watch it for the violence, the second time you do it as well, the third, the fourth, the 50th time, now the sting has already been taken out, and that might be beneficial.
But that was the defense that was actually playing it so many times today. I mean, literally, they played it at least 25 times. So it was coming from the defense.
But now you might have trained the jury to say, okay, you've seen the violence already. Now start to look for the details. Is something wrong in this video? Is something wrong here? Is it skipping over pieces? Is the government being deceptive? And if you can discredit the government for how they're presenting the case, you're that much closer to an acquittal.
Okay, we have to talk about Breonna's testimony on the stand today. What's the prosecution hoping to show with her?
So the prosecution called Breonna to show a couple of things. Number one, they want to corroborate Cassie's testimony in terms of the violence that Cassie underwent at the hands of Combs, in terms of what is Combs' demeanor, what's his, in terms of threatening people, the threats that she actually heard from Sean Combs. Also to go through, they wanted to put that piece of evidence that she was dangled from the balcony. So that was key. But I think more importantly, when we're talking about the charges, the racketeering conspiracy, how does her testimony fall into the charge is the predicate act of the possession with intent to distribute, because she did testify that there were multiple occasions that Sean Combs gave her narcotics, and that is one of the racketeering acts.
Yeah, but
if it's believed, of
Yeah,
course.
if it's believed is a big thing. I don't think, and we've seen this in our own cases, I don't think people believe drug dealers. And at the end of the day, that's what she's going to be painted as. She testified on the stand that her and Cassie used drugs at least once a week. And then when pressed on by even the government, she said, well, it increased over time. So more than once a week. And then when the defense came up, Nicole Westmoreland, amazing cross-examination thus far, the laundry list of the types of drugs. I never knew what Cocoa Puffs were.
We all learned what Cocoa Puffs were today.
Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, I've been practicing for over a decade. I thought I knew all the drugs. Didn't know that one. And now you have this person who's supposed to rest their credibility of what Cassie was doing, what Sean Combs was doing. I think they could have done without this witness.
Are the drugs a problem?
It's not a problem, and this is why I say that. As a former prosecutor, when you're dealing with witnesses, one thing that you tell the jury all the time is that you take your witnesses as you get them. I didn't make these people witnesses.
Yeah, but she made herself high.
The defendant made this person a witness, so I'm not here to clean up this person. I'm presenting you the person with their flaws as they are. I'm not trying to clean them up. In the end, it was the defendant that made that person a witness. Also, remember that it also fits in the narrative in the sense of that the prosecution is saying that Sean Combs is the one who got Cassie addicted to drugs. So here you have the corroboration from another person that's on drugs that this is how much drugs they used to take as a result of it.
Clean them up as you want. And let me parse through this. I feel for people who have substance abuse issues. It is a serious thing in this country. We have represented people who have hit rock bottom, and my heart breaks for them.
On both sides,
on both
prosecution and defense.
I am not discrediting her for having that abuse and going through that. That is her own trauma that she's working through. But if you're going to ask me to believe what she heard, what she saw, what she felt, and what she's testing to when she was in the thralls of that all, that's a whole different thing that I think is difficult for the jury. I hope she gets the help. I'm glad that she has a tattoo of January 2nd, 2018 on her neck, and she's now getting sober. But believing what she saw and heard on that day, that's a different thing that the jury's having to grapple with.
You don't think she was believable?
No, I don't think in many things. I still go back to the balcony. I'm like, it doesn't make sense if Sean Combs is picking her up from underneath the armpits to clear that level.
Eva, I wish I had a tape
Eva,
measure.
there were issues with her testimony. I did question the prosecutor for calling this witness. Personally, I would not have called this witness as a prosecutor on this case. I don't think that you needed to call her.
Why would you not have called her?
Because I don't think that the pros of what she brings to the table, how she moves the ball in terms of proving these charges, are not outweighed by the cons that she has in terms of the drug abuse, in terms of selling drugs, in terms of the inconsistencies, in terms of how she held herself up doing cross-examination.
I think she also hurts the case because she's the person who's testifying that she's supplying drugs to Cassie, something that the defense is definitely going to pounce on closing
And so
arguments.
is Combs.
How much for each, though?
I know.
Because she said...
But all you need is one.
She said...
All you need is one time that Combs
gave it to her once, according to her.
That's all you need.
Many times, if you believe her.
If you believe her. Everything comes down to credibility.
And I love that you kind of both agree on that one. Ryan Buckmeyer, Bernardo Villalona, thank you both for being here with us today. Still ahead, the media circus, the networks, the influencers, the vloggers, oh my, they are all lining up outside to bring their followers and viewers in. We chat with YouTuber Tisa Tells when we come back. Welcome back. The Sean Diddy Combs trial has garnered massive attention throughout the country and abroad. Alongside various news organizations covering this trial, there are many bloggers, vloggers, YouTubers, social media influencers who are lining up outside of court every morning to see it for themselves inside the courthouse. My next guest, Tisa Tells, has been in the courtroom since the start of the trial, giving her more than 500,000 YouTube followers her take on the day. Tisa is here with us. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, Eva, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with ABC Live.
I'm so curious because you have a lot of followers. What are they most curious about learning about with this trial?
So they're curious about learning something that you can't get in the tweets or even the articles. They want to know the energy. Diddy's captivated everyone, and they really want to know the tea. What's going on? How were the jurors looking? How's the judge acting? They want to get as much information as they can. I've never seen anything like it. Everybody just wants a bird's eye view of what's going on in the courtroom because they want to find out whether he's going to be convicted or not, and they want as much spoilers as they can get.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like how many people are, like when you look at the numbers of people who are like coming to your YouTube channel and the comments, are you seeing a spike in those types of views and comments?
It's a major spike. Again, even people that aren't even on YouTube, you know, of course, you guys, legacy media, they consume it, but then it's this voracious appetite. They're going to YouTube, they're going to TikTok. You know, people are talking about it at work. They cannot get enough about it. It's really, I've never seen this much coverage across all platforms when it comes to a trial.
And so what's interesting with this trial is that there are no cameras in the courtroom.
At
so
all.
We can't see what's going on inside. So walk us through, for people who haven't been in that courtroom, what's it like when you get there? How do you get in? What's the whole day look like for you?
It's hell. So when you get there, and I take people on my journey.
Like what time do you get there?
So you get there as early as you can. Cassie's days were a little ridiculous. People were clamping out from 5 the night before, but usually you got there before the sun got up, right? Everybody is still jockeying for position, you know? So you get there, and there's all these different personalities. There's the press, and you guys are trained, so you know, like, okay, let's line up orderly. And, you know, it's kind of like getting off of an airplane. And then there's the public side. And it's kind of like being at a Greyhound bus station, you know? People are jockeying for positions, arguing, who's that? it really is a reality TV show in the making. There are so many personalities from the bloggers, right? And as a blogger, it's surreal seeing people that you watch actually in real life. But then there's the general public. Then there are people that are just like looky-loos. Then there are the pro-Diddy people. And it's literally in one line, all these personalities coming together, all these random arguments, all these random jokes. It literally is almost like the precursor to the main event. So it's something else being out there.
I think I saw somewhere that like people have had to hire security because it's gotten a little hairy out there.
Yes, it is me. I am people. It has gotten crazy outside in the line. Again, I've talked to people in the media and they're just like, they've never seen anything like it. There are people threatening to hurt people because how dare you laugh at Diddy's legacy. There are people very pro-Diddy. And the thing is, I'm like, do any of you guys ever have any ties to Sean Diddy Combs? Or is this just like massive like stan culture? But again, there have been scuffles that broke out in line, fights that have broken out in line. I think the federal marshals can't wait until we get off their step because they're like, what is going on now? And then you have different levels, right? You're outside and then they put you into a bullpen. So there's human conflict that happens on the street, right? To put it nicely. And then you go into this bullpen. Same human conflict, right? But now they've reorganized everybody. So now it's like, oh, I was number 4. How dare you, this and that. All this thing. People are like talking about beef they saw online. People are saying, scream, free Diddy, how dare you? And then you go into the courthouse and they shuffle us up again. So it literally is like, it's something, but it invigorates you and it gets you ready because you feel like you've finally gone through war and now you're in the promised land in the courtroom. They only take the first 14 people. So that's another, into the main courtroom. So that's another reason why everybody is doing what they can to get a front row seat.
Because they want to be inside the courtroom,
Exactly.
not in the overflow room.
Yeah.
You've covered other trials. You've been into other courtrooms. How does this one compare to those?
I've never seen anything like this. In other trials, yes, there's media attention. It's great being around actually legacy media because even being in line, just even talking to you guys, I'm learning so much. Things I didn't consider, things that I should do, and how to up my game. And I feel like a lot of content creators are really appreciating being with legacy media to actually learn the way things are done.
Well, we love having you guys with us as well. We learn a lot from you.
Really?
We are out of time. Tisa tells.
Okay.
Keep on telling everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. We'll be back with new episodes every day of the trial. The show streams right here on ABC News Live, Disney Plus, and Hulu weekdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. For even more on the Diddy trial, make sure to follow our podcast, Bad Rap: The Case Against Diddy, hosted by our very own Brian Buckmeyer on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'm Eva Pilgrim in New York. Have a good rest of your day.